Over the past several weeks, I've been making a mental list of some of the different plants that we want to bring indoors for the winter. And man, I came up with over a dozen different plants, whether it be the fig that you see here. We've got some cannas that have dried down. Back over on the table here, one of the regal geraniums, or Martha Washington. We're going to be growing that indoors, hopefully in a sunny location. But we're going to talk about the different temperatures they need, the light conditions. There is some rosemary that we planted out of our garden, and we're going to bring those indoors. Agapanthus, we're letting that kind of get subjected to some of the light frosts. The hibiscus, just a beautiful plant that we can grow in the summer up here. And then we're going to get after this pot as well. This also has that agapanthus, lily of the Nile it's called, and we've got some zonal geraniums in there. Let's get started talking about the cannas first. Lay down an old paneling sheet. I think that just makes it a lot easier to clean up. Our cannas are going to be stored in this box here. The canna is actually, it's a rhizome, often called a bulb. What we do, we start drying them down. You can even let them be subjected to a few frosts. And just for context on all the plants we're talking about today, we're about third week in October. We've had 2 or 3 temperatures where we've at night dipped just a little bit below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can either plant the cannas in the ground, but we typically put them in planters. Reason being, cannas like it hot. That's when they will really take off and grow. So by putting them in these metal pots, we see them grow quite a bit more quickly, even though we bought them probably, I bet they were already a foot tall, started probably in California and shipped into our garden centers. We're just gonna lay this down, see if we can just get this leveraged out of there. There we go, it broke off. And what we're gonna do next, we'll go ahead and just cut that foliage back. So the cannas, you can get quite a few different color blooms, red being the most common. There's also yellow. There's different foliage colors, whether it be variegated, more of the maroonish, dark green. I don't think you have to shake all of the soil off, but I'm gonna get most of it off. There's one of the rhizomes right there. Another small one right in there. I think we're going to leave it just at that level. My goal then is to keep these rhizomes in the dark, and they'll be stored in my garage that's kept between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the winter. My thoughts are not to go over 60 degrees, as I think they'll sprout too soon, especially if you have a long winter like us here in the northern Great Plains. Coming to you from Zone 4 here, by the way. One of the reasons you want to use either paper bags or cardboard boxes to store some of these different plants we're going to talk about, that paper or cardboard is going to absorb some of the moisture. What you don't want to have happen is you don't want to use plastic. That's going to trap that moisture. You could get some molding in there, some rotting. Let's go ahead and shift gears and take a look at one of the figs we've got over here. This is one of the fruiting figs that you can actually eat those figs. We had, I'm betting, almost 2 dozen this year. And the figs, they'll tolerate it, I believe, down to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So we've hit, like I said, that 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I've been letting this dry down now over the last month. And that'll kind of, again, signal the plant to start going into a dormant type condition. So we're going to overwinter this in our garage that we keep at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I did it successfully last year at that temperature. We brought it out in the spring and it leafed out and started producing figs. Yeah, so all there is on the fig is just bringing it in the garage to keep it at that temperature, that 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing more to do on this one. So again, let me emphasize that it's a gradual process on some of these different plants. All right, next we're going to go ahead, we're going to look at a hibiscus right there. Yeah, that looks pretty tough, doesn't it? But look at how it looked this summer. Just absolutely beautiful. We had never really grown hibiscus before, but really just kind of fell in love with them. How many different blooms you can get. I brought this hibiscus into the garage, I'm going to say about 2 weeks ago, before we had any cold conditions on it. The hibiscus, far as I can tell, you really don't want to let them get below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This one so far, the stems seem like they're not getting dry or brittle. I wanted it to hopefully dry down, drop all its leaves in the garage, just easier to clean up. I don't think it's going to happen. And at this point, I want to get it in a dark location. I'm going to keep it in a crawl space at about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Same scenario we had on the fig. We let this kind of start drying down, pushing it into a dormant thing. Then we got it in the garage so it wouldn't be subjected to any cold frosts. And I might go through and just clip some of these leaves back. You can also overwinter hibiscus indoors. Get them in a nice, bright, sunny area. They'll drop, I bet, 75% of their leaves, and they'll just kind of hang in there. They'll look a little bit tough, but that's probably what most people do. I don't have the space. I've already brought in too many other plants, and that's the reason I want to try this dormant overwintering and see what kind of luck we have. And on the subject of not having any more room, this whole process of migrating our different plants indoors all started, I would say, about 30 days ago. We bring a lot of our houseplants outside for the summer. I think it just refreshes them, gets them some of that bright light. That's a large split leaf philodendron. Did a video on that not too long ago where we repotted that. It's doing excellent there. So that's one that we brought in. This is a Benjamina fig, and I've had that now. I started that from a 6-inch little plant, and I've upgraded it into different containers over the years. But I bring that outside, put it on the porch every year. It doesn't get direct sun. Down here we've got a sago palm, and I've had that now, I bet, 7 or 8 years. Here's a Dracaena that we took out of one of our annual flowering pots. We'll see if we can keep it growing through the winter indoors. It's a nice color variation next to the other house plants. Dracaenas prefer bright light, but they can tolerate some low light conditions for a few months. We keep our house at about 69 degrees Fahrenheit through the winter, which seems to work fine for all the different house plants we've covered. Just a few more that we brought in. There's a yucca that we've had for many years. We bring that outside. It seems like it appreciates that, and then we bring it back in. This jade, boy, that thing's out of history here. I did a video on it where I upgraded it into a bigger pot, but it ended up getting the mealybug insect. So we brought it outside, and it ended up crashing to the ground in a windstorm. So I gave it a good haircut. We'll see how that turns out. And then here's another one that we take in and out, a managave. Doing nicely there. I actually put that in the full sun almost accidentally this spring, and it kind of laid down flat. So I got it out of the direct sun and it came back beautifully. Go ahead and get back outside and look at a couple rosemary plants that we'll be bringing in. And back over here, this is where we dug the rosemary out. That's where it was growing. I thought, I'm going to give it a shot, bring it inside. But I have not been as successful as I would like to be over the last, I'm going to say, several years now. We've been bringing rosemary in, and we've lost them. I've heard varying opinions. Even if the leaves fall off, the plant goes into a semi-dormant condition. If you get it back outside, it'll relieve. I haven't tried that just yet, so I'm not sure if I'm watering them too much, too little. It's an ongoing experiment. So what I'm doing this year, I've dug them out of the ground. Now they've been sitting here about a week, and I just want them to get adjusted in the pot before bringing them inside. My plan is to bring them indoors next to some of those other tropical plants we just showed you, in a more of a sunny location, and then we'll keep them, I think, growing on the dry side, see if we have any luck overwintering them this year. Okay, next up over here, we've got an agapanthus. Lily of the Nile. There's a backstory on this one as well. You can certainly take a look at this video where we originally got these, how this planter all started. We just never got this one planted out this year. So we're just going to let that kind of be subjected to a few frosts, let it just dry down naturally, and then I'll just put it in the garage at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, dark. I'm going to keep it dark, and we've had luck overwintering them that way. This one I think is going to be just a little bit more challenging than the cannas. It's a plastic pot, and right inside it's got a lip, and that's going to prevent, I think, us from pulling out what's going to be, I think, a pretty massive root ball. It's going to be difficult to get it out of there. So this planter, the agapanthus, is what we've got growing in the center. But first, on the outside of this planter, we've got quite a few geraniums we'll be removing. Once we remove all the soil, they'll go dormant, and this is a first for me, overwintering geraniums in their dormant state. I'm going to keep them in the same type of box we use for the cannas, and they'll end up in a dark location in a crawl space, which stays at about 60 degrees Fahrenheit through the winter. And we're going to take all that soil off. It doesn't look like the cold temperatures have affected it. I don't know, those stems, they seem pretty darn healthy. Everything I read, you shouldn't go below that 50 degrees Fahrenheit because this is a zone 9 plant. But so far, so good. And we've let this dry down over the last several weeks too. Again, pushing them into a signaling, almost a dormant type situation. These are coming out a lot easier than I expected. Yeah, they're just pulling right out. I am going to trim off the flower stems here, and I'm going to go back in part way. I'm not going to worry too much about where I cut it, because my understanding is come spring, we're probably going to be cutting this back to 2 or 3 inches. And when I say spring, since my wife and I start a lot of seeds indoors, we usually have some growing lights, some different areas set up. We'll break these out of their storage area and we'll get them growing in some pots with soil, which will give them a couple of months to put on some new leaves. I know I've read things too, put them in a paper bag, hang them upside down. I'm just going to put them in this box and pack as many in there as I can and hope for the best. All right, and then it looks like we've just got our agapanthus. So we should be able to just run that shovel all the way around, pop that thing out, and we'll be able to overwinter that as well. I'm going to cut back some of the leaves here, but I have left them on during storage too, and then just cut the dry leaves back in the spring. I'll plan on doing an update on this video, sharing with you how our winter plant storage turned out. So keep an eye out for that video. That's all I've got for now. Thanks for stopping by Garden Hike. We'll see you again next video.